Hi, I'm HAL Meier, and this is a program which we call Off the Beaten Track. In other words, we're going to discuss those topics which are not yet sanctified by tradition. The scientific community has not made up their mind, and the religious authorities perhaps are not fully in approval, but which might nevertheless be very important, and in the world ahead might turn out to be the established tradition. Last time, the people who talked about this was Schopenhauer, the philosopher, and for example, he had said, most of the great ideas go through three phases. In the first phase, the idea is widely ignored. And in the second phase, the idea is roundly and vigorously rejected. But in the third phase, finally, is accepted as having been self-evident all along. Well, maybe these ideas will not always become self-evident, but some of them certainly deserve to be looked at. We did a series a couple of weeks ago or months ago on near-death experience and the story of life after life. And I think that's at the stage where no longer can be ignored, because there are now thousands of cases and hundreds of books on this subject. So that must be somewhere in the middle of that category. This one we're picking up now is on the subject of 2012 and counting. 2012, of course, is the date on which the Mayan calendar presumably was to end. And so we picked that up. Let me just put some numbers on the board so you have it directly in front of you. The date is December 21, 2012. On that day, the long count calendar for the Mayans is supposed to end. But the only trouble is there were 4 or 5 calendars for the Mayans. The Mayans had a calendar for 20 days. They had one for 260 days, which is a gestation period, I guess, for humans. They had one for 360 days, to which they sometimes added 5 more days and therefore came close to our own year. But they had another calendar for 5,125 years, and it is this long count calendar that is coming to a conclusion on December 21, 2012. Well, what do you suppose is going to happen on that date? The Mayans say, well, I don't know, it comes to the end of the cycle, but we don't know for sure what will happen on that date. What we think will happen is between the year 2008 and 2015. Somewhere in there is an opportunity window, and sometime during that period, all of the things that are supposed to happen, presumably on that date, will by that time have occurred. Now, what will have occurred? Well, lots of amazing things, apparently, according to them, including some of them, it will be the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle, and the end turns out to be not too happy and full of tribulation, perhaps, and the new cycle turns out to be a golden age. So we hope that you're going to be on the right side of that particular tradition. Okay? So that's the beginning of it. The trouble is that as we get to talking about things which are really hard to take, people will become fearful. And we're just as concerned about that as anybody else is out there. we're worried too that you will worry about the things that might occur. And the answer in general by the Mayans and everybody else who has looked at this subject is something like this. Remember to be faithful to your tradition and your heritage. Remember to love your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And as you do those things, you will be in harmony with nature, and in the process, you'll be doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you'll be saving yourself and the rest of humanity. So I'm going to try to emphasize that as much as possible in the course of this presentation, even though from time to time it will seem to be difficult. There is also, let me just take a look at a note or two. There are a lot of different people that I've relied upon in order to put this together. I'm not a psychic. For all I know, no clairvoyant capability. I'm just a teller of stories based on what I've been able to read. And some of those things that I've been able to read, however, are really done by wonderful folks. And in the course of talking about this, I'll start to give you an indication of what that is. Okay, one of the questions here is something like this. Well, what do you suppose, why is this date here anyway? Suppose it's an important date, but how do I know what it's based on? Well, the Mayans, and there are like 440 tribes of Mayans in Central and South America, just for your information. The Mayans said, look, I'm thinking I'm going to turn this over so I can get all of this together. The Mayans said, actually, if you take the sun, that happens to be the sun, just in case you didn't realize it, and the center of the sun, and here's the earth, much smaller than that relatively, but nevertheless, you get the idea. And over here someplace is the center of our galaxy, of which we are a part. But the galaxy extends even beyond us. And this line between the center of the sun, our Earth, and the center of the galaxy, if that were indeed a straight line, it will finally be in alignment on December 21st. So that looks pretty important, does it not? How often does that happen? Well, actually, they say it happens very irregularly, but as a matter of fact, I don't quite understand why that should be terribly important. Let's be skeptical about it as we go through this. The trouble is, the Earth goes around the sun every year. So next year it'll be about in the same position as it is now, and so maybe this won't happen until 2013 or 2014 or 2015 or 100 years from now. And that's a really big difficulty with this kind of record keeping. Now, maybe the Mayans know something that I don't know, which is highly probable, but in any case, you see that this is a little bit sketchy in the way of setting a time and a date. So alignment is one of the ways by which we determine what that date is. Now, there's another way of determining it, and it's much better and actually very clever. You realize that the Earth, let's say, is something like this, and at the top of the Earth, there is a wobble, just like there is at the bottom. And the top of the Earth, let's just use my globe here as an example, it is normally spinning happily and rotating, and as it does, it goes around the sun. Well, the trouble is with the Earth is that for reasons which we don't quite understand, it also wobbles, so that as it turns, it also goes a little bit like this. And that wobble amounts to about a 9% shift at the top and at the bottom of the Earth. So, and let's see, and that, for that reason, produces also an axis. And this, and as it wobbles, the axis turns, and it turns actually through 12 spaces. And these have come to be known as the houses, signs of the zodiac. So at this particular moment in time, and in 2012, it is said that this axis has shifted from, or will shift, from the house of Pisces to that of Aquarius. Okay? And then after that, the others will follow in due course. Each time it takes 2,100 roughly years for it to go from one house to the other, and over a total period of time, about 26,000 years have to elapse for it to go all the way around in one complete wobble. All right? Half of that, however, is also very important, because as it goes from here to here, it goes through some, according to them, a spiritual evolution, and in the course of doing that, becomes a different spiritual dimension. And then as it comes around this corner, the same thing happens. And so that every 13,000 years, you can depend on a really big shift in consciousness and the things that are going on the Earth. Well, actually, but for one reason or another, we've accepted the idea that we're going from Pisces to Aquarius. Nobody seems to even be arguing about this. Some say, well, it doesn't really not going to happen this year. It's going to be 3 or 4 more years before that happens. And you can argue about that date. But this seems to be pretty well accepted. And it only happens once every 13,000 years. So you can't just say, well, every year it's going to change. No, it's not going to change. This is a pretty good measurement of that particular date, and we call this the precession of equinoxes. I'm going to let it just go there. And so in addition to the alignment, the precession also identifies this particular date of December 21 as one which is liable to occur, and it is more accurate and seems to be a harder date to follow. There is, let me just take a look at a note or two here. The only trouble is with all of this is there is a problem with time. In any case, you recall that the prophets in olden times had this to say about their prophecy. It was conditional. And it was conditional upon what? Well, we have free will. We can change our minds. God can decide not to bring down his wrath or to impose it. And all of those things are certainly possible. So time has been a problem for us from the beginning. Let's put it this way. Suppose that this is a mountain, okay? And here is a river flowing around the mountain, coming out over here, and guess what? It goes over a falls, and if the prophecy is that if you continue to go, here's a, it happens to be, if that's a boat, please. If you continue to go the way you are going to go over the falls and kill yourself. Okay? But that doesn't mean you can't get around.